Sometimes I will read a book or occasionally consume other pieces of media, and when I first interact with it, I'm sort of disquieted, but I don't realize that's what's happening. And so instead of realizing this made me uncomfortable and I don't know why, I'm asking myself, wait, why did I read this? What was the point? But then it sits with me and it bothers me and it nags at me, and I realize that it's had a big impact on me, much more than I would have realized when I first started it. Like, that's what happened when I first read Jack Vance, is I liked him, but I also couldn't figure out why I liked him so much. And I felt kind of guilty because he supposedly had a reputation as a pulp writer. And then I realized, even at the time, he was seen as a highbrow writer, and now he's very much, because he did really interesting things. And it's a similar thing with this history book, Vanished Kingdoms by Norman Davies. So Vanished Kingdoms, The Rise and Fall of States and Nations, and it's a specifically European history, talking about 15 European countries that don't exist anymore in their histories. And several of them are ones that interest me. It starts with Strathclyde, which fascinated me when I was younger. It was a Brythonic, so like related to Welsh, Britain, Cornish-speaking language in southern Scotland and northern England. And then countries like Burgundy and similar countries that existed and don't exist anymore. And it did answer one question I'd always had, which is, why did Montenegro, which won the First World War, disappear? And the answer is the Serbians basically sent Serbian paramilitaries in to overthrow the Montenegrin government and annex it into the new country of Yugoslavia, or Kingdom of the Serbs, Croats, and Slavians initially. But for the most part, I was reading this, and I wasn't really sure what to make of it. And I'm like, oh, this is European history. Do I really need to read? Read a lot of European history when I was a kid, and I'm like, there's so much going on in the rest of the world. And then I realized there was a really interesting theme running through this, which is what I call the idea of composite states. So they are states which are multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-jurisdictional, and they have a bunch of these small parts with their own laws and languages and traditions. And these states have vanished, either homogenized as they became empires like France, or the empires got broken up into nation states with often population exchanges like Austria-Hungary, which is not in this book, I believe, but Poland, Lithuania, sort of similar situation. Actually, he did talk about Austria-Hungary, yeah, because he talked about the Kingdom of Galicia-Lodmere within Austria-Hungary. And I realized this idea of composite states. So I'm into alternate history, and I've had developed scenarios, and I might, if I have time and money, like I would love to do either series on this channel or a new channel talking about alternate history ideas I've had that, for the most part, I probably will never write books about. But so I've had a couple of them based on this idea of, what if the Europe of composite states survived and you didn't have the same degree of modernization, but you also didn't have the same degree of disruption. And so you have a world where the living standards are maybe 100, 200 years behind now, but there's no First and Second World War, there's no colonialism taking over all of Africa, there's no attempts at partitioning China. And what would this world look like? And I realized when I read John Gray's The Two Faces of Liberalism, and he argues that Thomas Hobbes sort of argued a liberalism of pluralism of values, that this, and also, I don't have this one up here, I didn't pull it, Wizard and the Prophet by Charles Mann, which I mentioned previously in my video on modularity, is like, when you have smaller, more local institutions, they are more responsive. And this is obviously frustrating to the people at the center, and it leads to slower growth than having a more homogeneous jurisdiction. But it also, like, I have complicated feelings on this that I might talk about in the future, but I wanted to talk about it quickly because this was a book where, when I read it, I'm like, this feels like a guilty pleasure, because I'm just reading these short vignettes about European countries that don't seem like they're going anywhere. And then I realized there actually was a really interesting through line running through it, this idea of composite states. And then I eventually realized that it actually ties in well with John Gray and the Two Faces of Liberalism, the Hobbesian pluralist, values pluralist liberalism, as opposed to the more universalizing form of liberalism that we sort of, even people, like, I'm talking liberalism in the broad sense, most people in developed countries today are liberals in that sense, and most people in that are universalists and believe that there is one best set of values that we should be striving to have everyone accept. Whereas these composite jurisdictions allowed a lot more autonomy for these populations with their own laws and languages and customs, and without necessarily trying to impose that on others. And I'm very much coming around to, this is, today we need to be doing the Gray idea of a Hobbesian values pluralistic sort of liberalism as opposed to the universalizing, there is definitely one best way and we should be getting everyone to do it. So this book was interesting and has grown on me more and more with time, and I will probably reread it sometime soon. But I wanted to talk about that. I found it interesting. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm Magpie. This is Leela, and we'll see y'all in the next one.